Max has a big head and broad shoulders. Al has a small white face. He wears gloves and a silk muffler. His long black coat is buttoned at the chest, concealing anything beneath it. Both men could be in their 40s or 60s. They have hard faces that have aged quicker than years. They sit at the opposite end of the counter from Nick. Each of them grabs a paper menu. George watches both men, gives them a minute before he wanders over.
What's yours?
I don't know. What do you want to eat, Al?
I don't know.
Al looks around the place, looks at Nick, and then George. There doesn't seem to be anyone else present.
I don't know what I want to eat.
Close on Nick as he looks up from his paper. He was finishing a story and didn't pay too much attention to the men until then. Now he watches them. George waits for the men to make up their minds. He's in no hurry for them to decide.
I'll have a roast pork tenderloin with applesauce and mashed potatoes.
It isn't ready yet.
What the hell did you put it on the card for?
George points at the paper menu held between Max's fingers.
That's the dinner. You can get that at 6 o'clock.
George gestures over his shoulder to a clock on the wall without looking at it.
It's 5 o'clock.
The clock says 20 minutes past 5.
It's 20 minutes past.
Max puts the paper menu back on the counter.
Well, the hell with the clock. What have you got to eat?
I can give you any kind of sandwiches. You can have ham and eggs, bacon and eggs, liver and bacon, or a steak.
Max picks up the list again, unsatisfied with his options.
Give me chicken croquettes with green peas and cream sauce and mashed potatoes.
George takes a breath and waits to reply this time.
That's the dinner.
Everything we want's the dinner, huh? That's the way you work it?
I can give you ham and eggs, bacon and eggs, liver and...
I'll take ham and eggs.
Give me bacon and eggs.
George collects the menus and puts them away before the men can change their minds. He walks to the back of the diner to a small window that leads into the kitchen. He doesn't open it, but calls in.
You hear that, Sam? Ham and eggs, bacon and eggs.
There is no reply. Max and Al watch the window, knowing a third man is somewhere behind it.
Yeah, got anything to drink?
Silver beer, Bevo, ginger ale.
I mean, you got anything to drink?
Just those I said.
Max and Al stare at George, and the counterman stares back until he can't anymore. Nick puts down his newspaper. He doesn't feel like reading anymore.
Well, this is a hot town. What do they call it?
Summit.
Ever hear of it?
No.
Al looks out the big windows into the quiet, dark street.
So what do you do here nights?
They eat the dinner. They all come here and eat the big dinner.
Max scans the walls, the booths. He gets a sense of his surroundings.
It's a clean, well-lighted place.
That's right.
He needs something to do, so George picks up a towel and starts to wipe up behind the counter.
So you think that's right?
Sure?
You're a pretty bright boy, aren't you?
Sure.
He isn't looking at the men anymore. He just keeps wiping and answering.
Well, you're not, is he, Al?
He's dumb.
Al notices out of the corner of his eye that Nick is staring at them.
What's your name?
Adams.
Nick looks at the men, careful.
Another bright boy. Ain't he a bright boy, Max?
Town's full of bright boys.
Nick picks up his paper again, but he doesn't read. He just stares at it to get his eyes off the men. George keeps on cleaning what doesn't need to be cleaned. Al stands up. He walks over to the big windows and looks out, watches like he's waiting for someone to come. Max looks up at the clock. Close on the second hand as it clicks and clicks on. Interior Henry's lunchroom, night, moments later. It's nearly 5:30 now. Suddenly, the window to the kitchen opens up. Both men turn. Nick looks up. A black hand appears and slides 2 plates through the opening. It disappears just as soon, and not a word is spoken. The window closes. George makes his way over, picks up the plates, and serves them accordingly.
Which is yours?
Don't you remember?
Al walks back to the window.
Ham and eggs.
Max glares up from the food to George.
Such a bright boy.
He takes the ham and eggs as Al sits down and takes the other. Nick glances over out of the side of his eye. He watches the men eat. Close on their gloves. They didn't take their gloves off to eat. George picks his towel back up and watches them too, eyes on the black gloves, holding knives and forks, scooping up eggs and meat.
What are you looking at?
Nothing.
The hell you were. You were looking at me.
The silence holds. Al takes another bite, wipes his mouth.
Maybe he meant it as a joke, Max.
George laughs uneasy.
You don't have to laugh. You don't have to laugh at all.
All right.
George turns around and looks for something to keep busy with. He grabs the coffee pot and goes to fill up Nick's cup, but it's still full. Their eyes meet, he and Nick's.
So he thinks it's all right. He thinks it's all right. That's a good one.
He's the thinker.
Max goes back to eating too. George and Nick's eyes meet again.
Want something to eat, Nick?
No.
George nods and sets the coffee pot down. Nick drinks his coffee and keeps watching the men out of the corner of his eye. Max nearly catches his eye. He looks back at the paper. It's open to a story about the war in Korea. Close on the headline, Allies are driven back in Korea.